Hi guys, this is chapter 10. This would have been completed the Wednesday before we went on spring break. So I'm going to walk you through it today. Chapter 10 is about writing a research essay. This is a brief chapter. We'll review the assignment sheet when we are all together in a conference when we come back from spring break, but it's posted to Canvas if you want to look at it early. You're more than welcome to do so. Your research paper should present an argument with a strong thesis statement. The thesis statement is your main argument. And I don't choose your paper topic. I allow you to choose almost anything. I will advise you and offer you suggestions if you have a couple of ideas, or try to steer you clear of something that I think may be difficult or not really very academic. Your thesis should be debatable, meaning that someone could potentially disagree with your position. And the paper should then work to prove your thesis by supporting the thesis and claims with evidence or research. This is features of the form. Again, it's on every chapter from this particular textbook, talking about the conventions of a research essay. Inquiry questions. What does the evidence suggest is true? What is the relationship? Academic inquiry always begins with the desire to find out something. Sometimes the researcher has a theory about what might be true, a hypothesis, a hunch that arises from an initial investigation. Sometimes the researcher merely begins with a question. What could be the cause of this? What is this like or unlike? What might explain it? While the initial motive is to find out, a subsequent motive may be to prove, which is often the case. In academic writing, this is usually the argument a researcher makes to convince others that an explanation, claim, or theory is true. While academic fields often fence off certain territories of knowledge that they are particularly interested in, any topic is researchable if the researcher has a good question. An example from a different textbook that I read many years ago, they put a bunch of teachers in a room and they got them asking questions about lemons. And ultimately they came up with an interesting research question about a lemon. It was, why do we associate lemons with a fresh scent? And it was a topic that they could truly research and provide an argumentative paper for. And a lemon is a pretty generic topic, right? Research begins with questions, not answers, and that's mostly true, but sometimes we really have a pretty clear idea of what we want to talk about, and so sometimes we do come in with our answer in mind. Later in this chapter, we'll explore what makes a good question. These all have similar features. A review of what has already been said, some background research about what other people in the field think or believe, a proposed answer to the question. So your thesis will be the answer to your research question. Citations that signal which ideas and information belong to the writer. Failing to include those citations mean that the paper could be considered plagiarism. And information from multiple sources analyzed by the writers. So you don't want to have all your research come from just one place. We want to show that a variety of people feel the same way. I don't fully agree with what the textbook says here about sources of information, because we want our papers to feel a little more academic than I think some of the things they're suggesting. I would say your sources of information are going to be library research sources, academic sources such as podcasts, credible websites, news sources, not really interviews, not really personal experience. We often assume that all research writing should sound objective. It should sound scrupulous to avoid the first person and formal diction. As you'll see in the next section, however, the language researched writing, like any other, is determined by the answer to the rhetorical situation. So whom am I writing to or for or why? So the example I often give here is, if you're writing to a group of pediatricians, the way you communicate in the language that is used is going to be different than if you're writing to a group of young mothers with young children. The things that they care about is different, and the language that they use will be different. And your tone will shift for that audience. Summary, paraphrase, and quotes. In summary, you're going to use a few words, your own words, to condense a paragraph, an entire article, or even a book into a few lines. You're really shrinking it down. When you are paraphrasing, you're taking a specific passage, maybe a specific sentence or a specific paragraph, and placing that into your own words. I think the largest difference for me between summary and paraphrase is how much you are shrinking down, the scale, if you will. Quotations, you are always going to enclose quotations in quotation marks. These are quotation marks. This is the citation that's coming after the quotation mark. Quotes are used when you're using someone else's exact words, and the citation is used to give credit to that original author. Summary, paraphrase, and quotation should all be cited to give credit to the original source. We will practice citations on MLA Day. MLA Day is a day in your syllabus where you will create works cited pages based off of a handout that I have done for semesters and semesters. So we'll get there to practice creating works cited pages as well as in-text citations. We've talked about analysis and synthesis. Analysis is breaking the whole thing down into separate parts so that you can sort of gain some new understanding about it. We can break our class down into pre-coronavirus and post-coronavirus. We can break our class down into assignments. We can break our class down into weeks or days. We can break our class down into objectives. I can break it into boys versus girls. I could break it down into the different, quads or groups that you guys sit in. Synthesis is taking what we have learned from breaking things down into separate parts and taking what we already know and kind of wrapping that all together to come up with some sort of new meaning or new understanding. That's the video we've already watched in class, but it's there again if you want to watch it. It's that Top Gear video where they break the cars down and then at the very end he offers some sort of judgment or evaluation. This would have been your activity, but I've modified it a little bit so you can do it on your own if you want a little practice. There's an argument, a researched argument written here. This is the link to this article. And I have a couple of questions. What is the main argument? AKA, I would call it a thesis. What are some examples of research that the author used to support the claims? And what kind of appeals does the author use to convince the audience? Logos, ethos, pathos, all three parts of them. Okay, it's just good practice. All right, I'll talk soon.